You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done. Hello, kids, and welcome to Biz-Souls, another exciting episode of Biz-Souls. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler.
And today we have an awesome guest, Dr. Michael Crupain, who just came out with a fabulous healthy cookbook called The Power Five, and we're going to be talking about that with him, and just have some fun with food. We're gonna play with food today, Jeffrey.
Yes, exactly. And Rona mentioned food, and next thing you know, Roscoe walks in.
My dog is here.
All right.
He's a big food. So let me read your official bio. Michael Crupain, MD, MPH, which is what, Master of Public Health?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is a board-certified preventative medicine physician, Emmy award-winning producer, we're going to talk about that too, co-author of What to Eat When and the What to Eat When cookbook, and self-described wellness crusader who just released his third book, The Power Five. He spent years studying culinary practices in his travels around the world and in kitchens of both grandmas and great chefs, bringing this wisdom to his medical career that spans EVP at the digital health company ShareCare, Director of Food Safety Testing at Consumer Reports, and Chief Medical Officer at the Dr. Oz Show, and faculty member at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. You've been a busy man. He's been featured on Good Morning America, The Today Show, Good Day New York, and LA, and has his own PBS special that has aired over 3,000 times. What was the name of the PBS special?
It's What to Eat When.
Oh, okay then. Well, I'm sorry I haven't seen it. Now I have to go look at it. Welcome, Doc.
You probably have seen it and just didn't realize it.
Probably.
It's been on so many times.
Yeah. So, man, you've done an awful lot of stuff. How the heck did you start with all this? Tell us your life story. You have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Go.
The question is what'd you want to be when you grew up? So did you want to go here? Where'd you start?
Yeah. So when I was a little kid, I always thought I would be an investment banker. Because I started.
Which is really close to what you're doing now.
Yeah. Teacher in school. What do you want to be to grow up? I want to be a fireman, a policeman. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be an investment banker.
Well, I wanted to be an investment banker. I started investing in the stock market when I was in the first grade.
Wow.
I remember I grew up in Manhattan until I was 8, and we would walk by this little brokerage house, and I don't know why I was interested in it, but for some reason I was. And I used to read the business pages, and like back then you had all the stocks in the newspaper, and you would go through. And that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then I went to college, and I was planning on majoring in economics, and I got to advanced microeconomics and decided I hated it. And that also, at the same time, I had been working in the summers as a legal videographer. So I was always interested in TV and video. And in high school, we had a TV station. I used to run it. And I got this job taping depositions. And I had to tape one summer all these depositions in this big corporate law firm in Midtown New York City. And they were these cases about bonds and insurance, and I was just I hated it. I hated the environment. I hated the culture of where I was. And then I hated microeconomics. And I was like, I'm not going to be an investment banker. I'm going to be a doctor. So
okay,
that's it went that way.
And then how did you get into food?
So I've always been interested in food from the time I started investing in the stock market. I was also cooking with my mom. So when I was a little kid, making cookies is sort of my first memory. And then in college, I lived off campus my senior year, so I had to cook, and I had to eat. So I had to cook every day. I didn't have to, I guess, but I really wanted to, and I really sort of was developing my skills there. And then when I graduated from college, it was 2001. I moved home with my parents for a year because I had a year off between college and medical school. And 2001 was when 9/11 happened, and my parents happened to live in Battery Park City. So we had to move out for quite a long time. Fortunately, nobody we knew was killed, which was amazing because a lot of my family are firemen and policemen.
Right.
Oh boy.
And we ended up living in someone's extra apartment in the village and eating out every day. And one day met this guy who we were sitting in a restaurant and the service was a little off that night. And this guy walked in wearing a chef's outfit and carrying a loaf of bread. My mom is a very forward person and said, "Give us some of that bread." And and then guy ended up being the baker for the restaurant in their catering business. And he sat down with us, invited us, invited me to work with him in the kitchen. And so I started doing that on the weekends, going and working to this catering kitchen where they catered for very high end photo shoots like Vogue, Glamour.
Wow.
I made Naomi Campbell's fruit salad and Howard Stern's birthday cake, and got to do a lot of menial tasks, and eventually graduated to working on pastry with the pastry chef. And he really introduced me to a wider world of sort of culinary arts that I didn't really know very well. He would take me to the shops where chefs buy things. He would take me to the cookbook stores and show me cookbooks in French. And I just sort of we would go out to eat and we would order entire menus of wherever we're eating.
That sounds like
to
so
try
much fun.
Everything. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And it was a great learning experience. And then from there, I just kept going. I worked in other restaurants for fun on the weekends. When I had some time in medical school, I started a pastry club in medical school. And then when I was a resident, and then since then, every time I travel, I try to go to a cooking school in another country wherever I am. And this food is just really my passion.
That's nice.
So healthy food, and you started off in the pastry department.
Right, that's an oxymoron. Well, he knows what not to do now and how to substitute, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still love pastry.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously pastry is not something we should be eating all the time. But part of the idea, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot, of the Power of Five is about eating more of the things that are really good for you.
Right.
And not saying don't eat other things.
Right.
But as you eat more of the really good things, you're full, and you don't, you're going to eat less of the other things anyway.
Well, I always I always tell people, I used to be in the fitness and lifestyle business, and when I would tell my clients, eating something bad every so often is a splurge. It's just this once. If you eat like that every other day, it's not an just this once. It's just eating like crap, So, okay.
I mean, I think food should be special, right? Like,
yeah,
I think I love eating in season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
I live in New York, so my seasons are different than if you're in California, like you guys. And, I get tomatoes from July until September if I'm lucky. And that's the only time I eat them.
Right.
And I love that. So like, I don't need to eat tomatoes every day because I enjoy them more when I eat them less frequently, or know that they're really special and they're at their best. And I think these other foods that we already are eating too much of now, if we make them special and eat them, certainly on special occasions, I mean, I think that's better for us. I like to say, I don't think people should give up birthday cake. I want people to eat their cake, but I want them to live longer so they get to eat more cake in the long run, but not eating it every day.
It's really good.
Go ahead. Did you have a question?
I did have a question. So you're in medical school. Most people are starting in medical school, and you're starting a pastry club. So was it just easy? Do you just pick it up?
Medical school? No, medical school is really hard. I think in life, you always think something's going to be easier when you get to the next stage, but usually it's either the same or harder. So college was hard, medical school was harder, residency was even harder than that. I think in medical school, I worked really, really hard. If you talk to some of my close friends, my roommates from medical school, to tell you that first year of medical school, I barely came out of my room because medical school is like learning a new language. You're learning all of these new things. You got to memorize a million things. And I really, when I went to medical school, my plan was to be a neurosurgeon. And I knew that to be a neurosurgeon, I had to be at the top of my class. And so I worked to get there.
And you ate pastry here and there.
Well, I mean, you have to have some fun. So I started the pastry club. That would be a little events we'd have on the weekends to gather folks together, learn together. It was a good time.
Oh, very good.
So tell us about how you came to you wrote a couple of different cookbooks, and now you're up to the Power Five, right? So how do you start? Do your cookbooks have an order? What was your thought process for these?
Yeah. So I think in my life, I've been very lucky. I learned from my mom, or my lesson from my mom is always leave doors open. That's sort of the family motto is, look look for opportunity, don't close doors. And when you're, not looking or looking or whatever, it'll appear, and take advantage of it. And so I never planned to write any books, actually. And what happened was when I left, I don't know, fast forward, like I actually did neurosurgery residency for a couple of years, and I
Oh,
left neurosurgery, and
Because
ended up doing preventive medicine.
because
Oh,
neurosurgery.
because, well,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I thought I wanted to do neurosurgery because I thought it would combine all of my interests, because I like working with my hands. I like cooking. Carpentry is another one of my hobbies. I was a neuroscience major in college. I really like studying how the brain works. And I thought, oh, I'm going to help people. I'm going to save lives. I'm going to learn how the brain works. I'm going to work with my hands. I'm going to have all these things I'm passionate about in one profession to satisfy me for the rest of my life, right? And when I did it, I realized it didn't really combine all my interests. It took away from all of the other things I was interested in doing. Because if you want to be a great neurosurgeon, you've got to just be a great neurosurgeon, and you can't go build furniture, and you can't spend time cooking. You got to really, really focus. And I realized, actually, I was at this cooking school in Italy, and at the last day of the school, this guy who ran it, his name's Silvestro Silvestori, has become a good friend of mine. The cooking school is the waiting table, and now we have a collaboration. And he said, "Thank you for coming to the school and paying me to learn about, the regional cuisine of Southern Puglia, because this is my dream to teach it to you." And that stuck with me, because I had sort of adopted an idea that, okay, I was going to be a neurosurgeon, I was going to make a ton of money, and then after a couple of years, I'd have so much money I could go do whatever I wanted, what I really wanted to do. And his words made me think, well, why would I wait to and be miserable doing something I don't want to do, just so I can go do what I want to do later? And so that's why I left, because I wanted to pursue the things I was more passionate about.
nice.
So the book comes about because when I left neurosurgery, one of the things I wanted to do, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I was kind of lost, because I was on a clear path to
Uh-huh.
neurosurgery. And now I was like, well, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that. What am I going to do next? And one of the things I thought is, well, I really hate hospitals. I mean, I had lived in the hospital for a couple of years, and I thought it was a terrible place. I thought hospitals were designed to make nurses and doctors happy and patients miserable. And I don't think that's how it should be. It should be the
Right.
opposite. And so I really wanted to change hospitals. And so I looked around and I talked to a bunch of people, and they said, well, you don't have enough degrees to be hired as a hospital administrator to do that kind of work. You need to go get an MPH or an MBA. And so eventually I got an MPH, and I still was told, no, you don't have the right degrees, but that's beside the point. So eventually I was talking to Mike Roizen, who became a good friend of mine. And Mike's the chief wellness officer emeritus at the Cleveland Clinic, which is an
Oh,
amazing hospital system. Like,
yeah.
they treat patients in a fantastic way. And I said to Mike one day, I was at an event with him, and I said, Mike, I don't have to work during the summers when I was working in TV. We had the summer off. I said, I don't have to work this summer. Can I come to Cleveland with you and work on a project in the hospital? Because I'm still interested in that type of work. And he said, yeah, that could be interesting, but let's write a book instead.
Of course.
And so that's, yeah.
That's
And
a
so that's
start.
that's how I got into books. Mike invited me to write a book with him. Mike's sold millions and millions of copies of his many, many books.
Yeah. Why not?
And he already had a publisher. National Geographic wanted him to write a book called What to Eat When. And it wasn't really a formed idea. And together, Mike and I turned it into a real thing.
Right.
And from What to Eat When came the What to Eat When cookbook after that. And then National Geographic asked me, it's like 3.5 years ago now, after that book came out, they said, would you write another cookbook by yourself? And I said, I don't know. Writing a cookbook's really hard, but I decided, the way we talked about it, I could get the right people to work with me and have a good time doing it. It would be fun and rewarding, and the topic would be something that would hopefully help a lot of people.
Nice. And now you have the Power Five. So how did this come about?
Yeah, so this is the book they asked me to write, and the original thing they asked me was, "Will you write a cookbook about food is medicine?"
Which
And I
is
said,
great. Yeah.
"Yeah." I said, "Well, I mean, I believe that food is medicine, but I also don't. Like, I think food is more than that. Food is something that's important culturally. It's important for a community. It's important because it's something we do every day, and it has to be delicious. And like medicine is not delicious. And so I didn't really like the idea of food as medicine. And over time, we sort of figured out how to evolve it into what I wanted to do. I wanted to write a cookbook that was filled with delicious recipes that just happened to be healthy, not like a health food book that had recipes in it. Because also when I look around at my cookbook collection, which is spread out all over my house because I have maybe 400 cookbooks, I don't think I have more than one healthy cookbook. And it's probably because somebody gave it to me,
I'm going to send you
right?
mine.
Because,
I have two of them.
all right, awesome.
Okay.
All right, cool. Wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because when I go to the store and buy new cookbooks, or like, it's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for cookbooks that are filled with delicious, inspiring recipes, and that's what I wanted to create. And then the idea of the Power Five is about eating more. So usually, when you hear a message from a doctor or a health person, it's either like, don't eat this, don't eat that, eat less. This food's gonna kill you. And I wanted to really change the narrative there. I wanted to empower people to eat more and eat more of these five foods that are associated with living a longer, healthier life. And the sort of thesis of the book is people aren't eating enough of these five foods because they don't think they taste good. So let me show you how to make them good.
Yeah, they're absolutely delicious. And that five is a theme throughout the book, right? The number five?
Yeah, I think five is I don't like to use the word magic, but five is a bit of a magical number, right? There's a lot of things. We have five fingers and five toes. There's a lot of things in different religions and societies that are around the number five. And we use the theme of five throughout the book. But when you look at the data, it really is these five foods that we don't eat enough of. And you could break them down differently. You could make them six or three if you really wanted to. But
Right.
I wanted to sort of categorize them into these groups of five, which are fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains, beans, and fish. And there's study after study after study. The data is really consistent that the people who eat these foods, more of these foods, live longer, that eating more of these foods is associated with reduced risk of death from cardiovascular disease and diabetes, that these foods are associated with reduced risk of cancer, that these are the best foods to eat, and we need to eat more of them.
Yeah. So it's closely related to the Mediterranean diet, yeah?
I mean, it's
Sorta?
spoiler, it is the Mediterranean diet,
Oh, okay.
right? It's
Okay. Yeah.
Mediterranean diet cast in a different way. And I think the Mediterranean diet is, to me, I love it, and I'm very passionate about the Mediterranean diet, but it's also like a weird thing to call a way of eating.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the Mediterranean, not everyone eats that way.
That's true.
And when you look around the world, the people who live the longest, who don't live anywhere near the Mediterranean, also do eat that way. So we've sort of named it the Mediterranean diet, but it's really it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's the Power of Five diet.
It's the power. Yeah. So it's what about? We actually talked about this when you and I met when you were at Melissa's Produce, and shout out to Melissa's Produce because they really, it was such a great spread, a great event, and I love them and their
Yeah,
produce.
they were amazing.
Fabulous. Having too much fish is not always good either because of the mercury, right?
Well, it depends
You have
if
to
they're
be careful.
depends if they're pelagic or they're local fish, like the ones that grow fast, like sheephead here.
Thank you, Michael.
Sorry. Sorry.
I asked it on purpose. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So fish are, there's a lot of confusion about fish, right?
Yeah.
So there are some fish that are high in mercury. Those are typically the really big fish, right? So tuna, swordfish, king mackerel, and tilefish are the absolute highest mercury fish.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of very low mercury fish. When I was at Consumer Reports, we actually published a great article helping people understand which fish were the high mercury fish and which were the low mercury fish and how much fish you could eat. I think there's a lot of fear people have about mercury in fish,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the FDA, when I was at Consumer Reports, we worked with them a little bit and talked to them about this project we were working on, and they were really concerned that pregnant women were not eating fish because eating more fish is associated with having offspring with a higher IQ. But pregnant women were so afraid of mercury in fish and not understanding which fish are high and which fish are low that they were just sort of giving up fish. And so, yeah, I don't really eat the high mercury fish. They are delicious, but I try to avoid them.
Right.
And there's lots of low mercury fish out there. And also, I think the bigger thing with fish is the sustainability of fish, right? If everyone ate as much fish as we should eat, there wouldn't be enough fish in the sea, right? And one of the ways we've tried to solve that is through fish farming. And a lot of our fish farms are not very good, right?
That's what, yeah, I try not to. And I'm always, it's like, how do I know if these farmed fish are good to eat? You know, because they throw coloring in and then they eat their own kind and all that. So I never know. Although
and they got sea lice.
Yeah, and I look at the Monterey Bay Aquarium has a great app that shows which fish are good to eat and where, you know, it's like, is it Vietnam? Is it Atlantic Ocean? Is it Pacific? So I know there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And when I go to Costco, it's like, do I get the farmed fish there or not? Although, so yeah, there's a lot that I think about when I look at fish.
Yeah, it's complicated. We could spend a lot of time talking about it, but the Monterey Bay is a great resource. There's also, you know, Whole Foods. If you shop there, they have their own rating system for fish. A lot of big stores, Costco may have one. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Have some standards that they make sure that the people they buy their fish from are following. So it's a good thing to look into.
That's actually
there's some international organizations. There's the Global Aquaculture Alliance where they have standards, and you can get their seal if you meet some of the standards, but if you can dig in and see how many standards people are meeting. And in the book, we talk about actually a fish farm that's very local to me here in upstate New York, where they have a recirculating farm. And if you're going to have a fish farm, a recirculating farm is generally, if you're doing it the right way, the most environmentally friendly and sustainable way to do it. It conserves water. They don't have to use drugs. They don't get the sea lice and other problems like that. And this place by me, they raise steelhead trout, which is one of the fish you can raise in these recirculating farms.
Yeah.
Steelhead trout are like rainbow trout. They're kind of a relative of the salmon. They have a bright orange, pinkish flesh loaded with omega-3s. They're really delicious. I've got a lot of recipes in the Power 5 cookbook for steelhead. And so, yeah, there's lots of good options out there, but you definitely need to do your research.
Yeah.
I just started my worm farm because in May we're going to go up and do some rainbow trout fishing and some brook trout.
Where do you fish here?
Up in Bishop. Switching over a little from the book to publishing of the book.
Do you want to talk more about sheep's head? Because they're very interesting fish.
They are a great fish. So I spearfish. That's why when Rona was going off, I threw that in that bit. Yeah, sheephead are great. Did you have something? Is there something I need to know about them that I don't know from a medical standpoint?
I mean, well, they're an interesting fish in that they swap their sex, right?
Yeah.
And
they're all female.
I think that's kind of interesting. Yeah,
they're all female, and somebody decides to be a male.
Not unlike American society now.
They're very unusual fish. You can tell. I can't remember if once they have the black stripe, they're
right, black, and they take on 3 colors. Where is Dave Chappelle when you need him?
That's right. Yeah,
Wait a second.
We could go off on a big tangent here, and we don't need those cards and letters coming in.
So, Michael, tell me about the publishing process. So, National Geographic contacts you. They say, write the cookbook. So you write the cookbook. And then how is it working with them as a publisher? Did they market it?
Well, he's not going to say anything bad about
Well,
them. He wants to keep working with them.
Well, no, tips or something, about it.
Yeah. So again, like I was lucky because they asked me to write the book and I didn't have to pitch them. But it usually, if you want to write a book, it starts with a pitch.
Yeah.
And we still had to create one because, we had to nail down what the exact topic of the book was. So I wrote up the Power 5 pitch. Usually your pitch is short. It's like a 1-page document. It has you haven't written the book yet, but it should have a lot of the ideas in the book. It should be catchy. Short is important, right? Because when editors who are, they get a lot of pitches, right? And I used to work in TV and I used to get a lot of pitches, and I know you read the first couple of lines and if you're not engaged, it's over.
Right.
And so you got to spend, I believe, your most time when you're writing a pitch on the first couple of lines of your pitch, your first paragraph. The rest is important too, but that's the heart of it. And then, once we started, it was really great. I got to choose, different cookbooks work different ways. Some you usually get an advance, and either from that advance you hire all the photographers and recipe testers and things, or the way Nat Geo does is they give you an advance and they probably give you less, and then they save some of that money to hire those people. So for the Power 5, you still want to have influence over it, right? So you want to choose your own people, and I had learned that we had done that in the first 2 books too. But Mike Roizen taught me that you want to make sure that's in your contract, that
Sure.
you sort of get to approve everything. And so, but my editor, I'd worked with her already on other books, and she really wanted this book to be very personal to me. So I chose the recipe tester, someone who I knew really well, chose a photographer who we had worked with in the previous book, but had become a good friend. I chose another person to help me make the writing sing a little better than if I did it on my own. And so after that, kind of just got to work. And the book, we started working on the book, or the contract and the idea was all pre-pandemic. And then the pandemic came and the book kept getting delayed, which was great. So we had a lot of time to work on the book. So it took me about 2 years to sort of create the recipes and write the book. And then it takes another 6 months or more, or 8 months to get it out into the world after it's done. So I had a lot of time to develop the recipes. It was during the pandemic. I was living here, right where I'm sitting in my kitchen, and this is where I did all the cooking, and it was fun because it wasn't like high stress. There wasn't a big rush, and I got to really go to the farmers markets and pick the best ingredients and play with the flavor combinations and do a lot of experimenting. And
it's
then
my favorite thing to do. Go to the farmer's market and say, what's good? And you come back and say, some of this, lots of that. What do you come up with? So
exactly.
Fun, yeah.
So that's sort of how the book came about.
Nice. Fantastic. Do you have
And you're rich from it, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to work anymore.
No. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, writing cookbook is more of like a labor of love.
Labor of love. Exactly.
A plan to make any money, right? And promoting selling the cookbook is the hardest part, actually, right?
Of course.
Because
of course.
writing the cookbook feels hard when you're doing it. It's kind of like back to medical school, and everything gets harder. Right. So when you're writing the cookbook, it seems hard. And then when you finish it and it's out in the world, it's super exciting, but then you need people to buy it. And
that's a big thing.
Getting the word out and promoting it is actually really fun, but it's hard to get people to notice it.
Yeah.
And there's so many cookbooks out in the world, and it's a real challenge. And basically you have to spend that money that they gave you to write the book on developing the book and then selling the book. So in the end, you probably don't end up with much of anything other than a really cool book and people benefiting from having it.
And what are you doing and they doing for promoting the book now? I mean, my email's loaded. I get 800 emails a day, so how are you promoting?
757 are from me, and the rest I'm kidding. They're not.
Yeah, well, I'm so one thing that's really important today that's changed over time is social media. And I should have started building up my social media 2 years ago when we started working on the cookbook, but I didn't do that. And I'm way behind on that, but I'm doing it now. Today, people get their cookbook deals because of their social media following.
Right.
you get booked on television because of how many followers you have. And it's, I'll be honest, it's been a little bit more challenging than the previous 2 books because the world has changed that way. And I didn't focus enough on that task. So, trying to get out and meet people, make sure people know the book exists, go do events wherever I can. I've got a PR team that's sort of a combo team that some outside PR that works with National Geographic that is out there pitching the book all the time, trying to get on TV, radio, podcasts, magazines, and we're getting out. One of the tricks I learned, if you want some good tricks.
That was the last thing. Yeah, give us some tips, tricks, anyone who wants to do this.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a trick or more. Let's call it a tip.
Okay.
But I've in the book I've incorporated a lot of other people, right? So the book's not just about me, and it's just not about my recipes. It's about the people who I get who are great producers of different ingredients. Like I mentioned the fish farm, they're in the book. I have an interview with Steve Sando, the founder of Rancho Gordo, in the book. There's a place called Breadtopia, which is where I love to buy all my whole grain flours from. They're in the book. And so I incorporate a lot of other people in the book so that we would do some cross promotion.
Right.
And I mean, it's not like I picked random people. I picked people who I love and who do great things, but it's a good idea to try to incorporate as many other people into your book as you can, so everyone feels some, connection to it.
A little love from you.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's awesome. Well, this has been...
Yeah, the other group that's in the book that I didn't mention, I also have Paul Willis in the book, and there's 2 extra chapters in the book. There's the dessert chapter and there's a meat chapter, because I don't think people need to stop eating anything. I think you need to eat more of the 5 foods and eat better of other things. And Paul is one of the founders of Nyman Ranch. He's a hog farmer, and he basically created through Nyman Ranch a market for lots of other hog farmers to raise animals in a more sustainable way. And they weren't able to do that before him. And so now all these farmers who live their life that they've always wanted to live as being able to afford being a farmer. And we tell the story of that in the book.
Oh, that's great.
Nice.
And how do they get hold of the book?
You can get the book anywhere. Hopefully you can buy books. You can find it from your online retailer. You can find it at your local bookstore. If they don't have it, ask them for it and they'll order it for you.
It's on Amazon, isn't it?
It's definitely on Amazon.
Yeah. All right. And if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Best way to get in touch with me is to follow me on Instagram at Dr. Crupain, DrCrupain. You can also go to my website, which is drcrupain.com.
I'm just glad he didn't say get in a major accident and meet me in the hospital.
That's right.
No, I don't. I'm a preventive medicine doctor. So
okay,
that's right. There you go.
Don't get in the accident, and you never have to.
Because your eyesight will be good, your reflexes you'll be so healthy. You'll never just eat the food in his cookbook, and everything will be perfect. Excellent. This has been awesome, Doc. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and hopefully we will see you again for another cookbook and something else at Melissa's. Give us a buzz when you're in LA, or if you're in Orange County, come have a drink with us. We'll hang out.
Sounds good.
All right, that is it for us. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler.
And this has been Biz-Souls. Thanks so much. Oh, if you're watching, press the subscribe button. Follow us. We need the numbers. So tell everyone, listen, subscribe, and have fun.
Rona's always sharing her issues. She's feeling neglected.
I am. I have an abandonment issue. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
See you later. You've been listening to the Biz-Souls podcast with your hosts, Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.